Welcome to the Her Podcast with Kristin Sampson, offering a message of hope, encouragement, and reflection with special guests. Hey ladies, welcome to another episode on the Her Podcast. This next five podcasts, we're going to do a series on being enough. I've been visiting with several women over the last couple of years and have realized that this is something that's pretty common in women, of that feeling of not feeling like we're enough. And it's all across the board, anywhere from young ladies all the way to older ladies. And it's something we just do not talk about enough. Over the years, I've definitely struggled with this feeling of not being enough and being a stay-at-home mom. And feeling like that just being a stay-at-home mom was not enough. And I felt like I was missing something, or I wasn't doing anything big enough. Like, it just wasn't grand. I was not some surgeon or some lawyer, or I was a mom. And so it got me to the point to where I started having to reflect on my daily things, on what am I doing and why am I doing these things. So I've been in ministry with my husband for 20 years, and was blessed to be able to be a stay-at-home mom through those years, but also work with other women and help teach. And so that gave me an outlet as well, to feel like I was doing more than just being a stay-at-home mom. But I couldn't understand why I still felt like I was not enough. So I've been thinking of lots of different ways to go over this subject. And throughout the next 5 episodes, you'll get to hear from 3 other women in different ways of that feeling enough, because that's such a broad thought process. I feel like that, we can ask ourselves, are we enough as a wife? Are we being enough of a good friend or a coworker? Or, you fill in the blank with what you struggle with, of feeling inadequate, not enough. And so we're going to look at a story in the Bible that I thought of that would be good to go to. And that's in Exodus 3 with Moses. And after reading this story, we've read this story growing up multiple times, Moses in the burning bush. And it just hit me different this a couple years ago when I had to do it for a women's class. And it just struck me as, even Moses didn't feel like he was good enough to do what God had called him to do. And so let's look at Exodus chapter 3. And it says, so this is where the Israelites have been held captive for over 400 years at this point. So now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of the Midian, and he fled the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to the mountain of God. And there an angel of the Lord appeared in flames of fire from a burning bush. And Moses saw that the bush was that it was on fire, but it was not burning up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why this bush does not burn up. So when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, he called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here am I. So he goes over there and realizes that now there's this voice coming from this burning bush. And God tells him, take off his sandals because now he is on holy ground. And then he realizes that in verse 6, he says, I am the God, your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid. He realized that he was in front of the Almighty. And he said, I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. I am concerned about their sufferings, the Israelites. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he's talking to him about how he wants to save them, that he's heard them and he helps them. And then down in verse 11, but Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is who I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moses then says, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your father has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'Well, what is his name?' What should I tell them?" God says to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." So God also says to Moses, "Say to the Israelites that the Lord of the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go and assemble the elders of Israel to say to them, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you out of your misery in the land of Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites,'" and it goes on, "with the land flowing with milk and honey. The elders will listen to you, and the elders are to go to the king and say to him, 'The Lord your God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness and to offer sacrifices to our Lord God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. And after that, he will let you go.'" And then he goes on talking about how he's going to help them and take care of them. And then in chapter 3, what we just read, we also can see that God has made these promises to Isaac, to Jacob, and led them out of the promised land. And these verses also reveal some characteristics of God. That he can see his people in misery. He can hear them crying out. And he's concerned. Just like today, God, when we are having our hard times, our hard moments, our difficult times where we feel like we're not enough, he can see us, he can hear us, and he cares for us. He's concerned. He wants what's best for his children. And it might take a while to get answers or to get, relief during those difficult times or to feel like you're enough. But we've got to remember that God is there. He's got us here for a purpose. So like in verse 11, where it talks about, Moses' question, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" So does that sound like you sometimes? Like, do you ever question some things in your life where, you hear, well, we need to be having Bible studies with people. Do you feel like you're not able to do that? Or you need to give a big speech to a group? There's lots of different ways that we can feel like we're not enough and that God has called us to do and to be in certain places, certain things. So like being a parent, sometimes we don't feel like we're a good enough parent. We mess up. We make mistakes. Sometimes we're not a good enough wife. Sometimes we're not patient like we should be or caring like we should be. A good enough friend. We don't always listen. Or, go a little bit deeper. Putting us in situations to where God calls you to step up and to speak out and to be bold with your faith and maybe to help somebody. But maybe that's hard for you. We've got to remember that God gives us all things. Even Moses, he struggled with that. And God's talking to him right there. He's hearing his voice. He's telling him what to do and telling him how all these Miraculous things are going to happen. And he doesn't feel like he's good enough to do it. And as we'll read later on, like in chapter 4, we'll read further that after even all these signs and all these details God tells him, he still doubts himself. Even after being called from the burning bush, shown all these miracles, like I said earlier, he still doesn't think he can. So he has Aaron, somebody else, come and help him. So, it's crazy to think that somebody, for me, when I was studying this, that, if I was Moses and I could hear God speak to me and tell me to do something, why did he doubt? Why do we doubt? Why do we doubt the things that God allows to come into our lives and put us in these places? And, I was scared when my husband and I first went into ministry. I'm like, I can't talk to people. I was so shy. I would hide behind my mother growing up and hardly speak after I got married. And my husband really pushed me and helped to build my confidence and educate me on that I am enough because of God. That God has called us for a purpose, and he will give us the tools, just like he gave Moses, to go and to do great things for people. And that looks different for everybody. But how many times have we told ourselves that we can't do something, that we're not good enough, that we can't speak and say the right things, that we don't have the wisdom, we're not smart enough, or we're not talented, or have the right talent or the right clothing, or we can't invite people over because we don't have the right house or enough money. Like, the list goes on. We all have that thought process at some point that we are not enough, that we don't have enough. We as women, we struggle with comparing ourselves to the world and using that as our measurement if we're enough. But we are enough. God has created us and made us for a purpose with a plan. And he's given us the right gifts, the right talents, the right situations. We just have to make the best of those things and find the good in those things and be patient in those things and realize that we're enough because of God. Now, if you look in chapter 4, verse 11, the Lord said to him, to Moses, "Who gave human beings their mouth? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will help you speak and teach you what to say." So here God is helping and reminding him that he has made us, and he has made us for a purpose. And he's going to give him the ability to do what he is called to do. Just like today, God will give us the ability to do what we need to do today. Our situation is a little different because we don't hear God's voice from a burning bush, but we have God's word. God has this plan for us. God also uses people in our lives, situations in our life, to help direct us, just like he gave Moses Aaron to help him. I know with raising kids, it's not always easy. And it's actually very difficult, especially when they get to be adults, helping navigate through all the 17, 18, 19-year-olds' thought processes. There should be a real good book for that somewhere. But anyways, sometimes it feels like we're raising kids for like 400 years. And then some days it's nice and sweet and we want time to stand still. But during all those crazy times, God allows different people to come in our lives to help us. Sometimes it's in a way of grandparents. Sometimes it's in a way of other family members or close friends or church family. But God will help you through those difficult moments. A couple of examples I had put down. So like one time we were getting ready to go to church, and my oldest son was like 6 or 7, and he decided that he needed a quick haircut right before we walked out of the building, out of the house to go to worship or Bible study Wednesday night. And he just like cut right down the middle. We have no time to do anything else. So we have to just hurry up, get in the car, and go on with this kid who has the most hideous opposite of a mullet, or not mullet, but mohawk haircut. And so we get there, and the sweet lady, we're having it at a couple's house because the building was still being built. And a small group, everybody sees it, everybody knows what's happened. And so after church, the lady that was hosting was really sweet. And she was like, let me cut that for you. Let me help you out. I know you're stressed out about it. I'll help you and take care of this. Fantastic. It worked out so well. And I know that was simple, but when you're in that moment and going through that, it is so stressful. It is so crazy. Like, what gave him the great idea to go climb up and get this buzz hair clippers and cut his hair? Like, the things that they come up with are writing on the wall, coloring and drawing on the wall. Put a frame around it. Make it artwork. Make the best of it. Those were some little examples, but God will give us strength through the tough times. Like we have a loved one that's ill. If you have a loved one that's ill, He'll send people to help you through those difficult times. Church family, if you're part of a church family, which I highly encourage you be a part of one if you aren't, they can be a great help to you. And I know most of us women don't really want help because we want to feel like we're strong and we can handle this all on our own. But we also have to remember we've got to let other people use their talents and their strengths. And that might be coming and bringing you food or a card or a phone call to encourage you. Because like I said, we all have different ways and different talents and different ways that help us to feel like we're doing enough or being enough. In James 1, verse 5, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let us ask of God, that giveth to men all liberally, and it shall be given to him. So if we lack wisdom, we pray about it. God will give us wisdom. And I know when we open our hearts and our minds to wanting to please God. So going back to like analyzing what we do and why we do what we do, it needs to be geared towards pleasing God. Because if we're constantly trying to please man, the world, we're not going to feel enough. Because each of those people have different standards. They have different perspectives. They've been through different things. They have seen differently. They have different expectations. And that's the beauty of God, is that He made and created all of us for a purpose, for a reason. And His standards are in God, in His Word, in the Bible. And so we know what His standards are. And those are never changing. We can have hope and trust and know, and they're so simple. We make it complicated, but it's so simple. What complicates it is when we try to think about, well, what does Sally down the road think of my baking? What does Mary down the street think of my outfit or my house or whatever, how I speak or what I do or my job, or you fill in the blank. We can't let other people decide if we are enough, because we'll never be enough for other people. Just like they're never going to be enough for us, we're never going to be enough for them. That's not how we were made. God is enough for us, and we're enough for Him. And that's what our focus needs to be on. The Lord, in Exodus 4:11, said, the Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? It isn't what we do, but why we do what we do. Like I said, we have to have our hearts and our minds in the right place. Because then when those moments come up, because they do, and we get in situations where people start to make us feel like we're not enough, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we have to stop and realize that the world's standards are different than God's. And God is the only standard we need to be concerned about. Over the next 4 episodes that we're going to do of Being Enough, we're going to dive in a lot deeper with 3 different ladies. And I hope you tune into them because they're going to be really good. I've already recorded them. They are fantastic ladies. You will gain a lot of insight on some ways that will be beneficial to help you to remember that you're enough. So keep looking for those podcasts coming out. They'll be coming out pretty soon. Remember, you're enough. God has made us for a purpose and a plan in place. We got to trust in those moments. So thanks for listening. I hope this gives you a little hope, some encouragement, and I hope you can be able to reflect on your walk.